Hello, hello again, once again, everybody, and welcome to Matt and Cheryl's Gen Excellent playlist. I'm Matt.
I'm Cheryl.
Happy New Year! It's our first episode of 2026, although we are going to reserve our thoughts on the music of 2025 for our next episode coming up shortly when Cheryl's husband Mike will join us. If you're unfamiliar with us, this little exercise, we're building a playlist for Generation X, the music of our lives, starting as young children back in 1972, working our way to 1999. We're almost to the halfway point of the exercise. We are currently in 1984, the early stages, our second episode of 1984. We do some ground rules for building the playlist. It's not just our favorite music, it is designed to be played in a group setting for a varied audience. So there are some songs that just don't cut it in that environment. And for that reason, I've curated a separate playlist for the overspill tracks and the ones that don't really fit in that scenario, and tracks from our favorite albums. We'll talk about our favorite albums a few episodes down the line. My favorite album of 84 came out later in the year. Cheryl's is coming up fairly shortly.
Is it? Okay, I wasn't sure when mine came out.
Yeah. But again, we'll talk about those a little further down the line. And we always reserve the rights to change our minds because
Yes.
during the course of preparing for each episode, we're listening to tons of music from 1984, not just stuff that we're already familiar with, but stuff that is new to us. And the best part of this is the revelations that ensue from that process.
Yes, it's so true. And most of the time I'm listening to stuff I haven't heard really. Also, things that were really popular, like the stuff we're going to talk about today, that I
Yeah.
never listened to in the time. It wasn't anything that I was into.
Nothing unfamiliar about today's feature artists. We're going to talk about two of the biggest stars of the 80s, and their chart breakthroughs occurred around this time, late 83, early 84. We're talking about Madonna and Bon Jovi. I was trying to think about what's a common thread between Madonna and Bon Jovi, other than the fact that they started having commercial success around the time period we're talking about, early 1984. I would say, in my opinion, the common thread is you take a modicum of musical talent that's opposed to an abundance of musical talent. I don't think
Mhm.
anybody is going to claim that John Bon Jovi or Madonna have an abundance of musical talent, although
No.
they are not untalented individuals.
Yeah.
You take a modicum of musical talent and combine that with intelligence, organization, drive,
Yes.
and you can have big success. And being really good looking doesn't hurt either.
That is very true, and I agree with all of that. And I've kind of discovered this more as I've delved into, watching interviews with John Bon Jovi and like getting to kind of know him as a person a little more, especially in the more current. He is just an extremely grounded and driven man, and it is very apparent when you look at his resume. I mean, he's a musician, he's a writer, he's a businessman, he's an actor, he owns a restaurant, he's still married to his high school sweetheart, and he's incredibly good looking, and he still is. He still has hair. Like, so you look at that combination and, all that he's done, and you think this is a guy who really has goals and has reached them. And I think Madonna, the same thing. And they're not the most talented. They're not the best musicians. They're not even the best singers.
Right.
But they found a way with that drive to become two of the biggest stars in the world.
I wouldn't even say Madonna is particularly pretty in the traditional sense. Sexy without question.
Yeah.
John Bon Jovi is a very attractive individual.
Yes, he is. There's no doubt about that. Yeah, he is just a very good looking man. Madonna is more about style too,
Right.
and that's really what set her apart, and that's part of that drive because she had a vision and she knew that she had to stick to it and that it was her vision and she was not going to stray from it, and that brought her to what she became, which was not just only a music icon but a style icon.
John Bon Jovi definitely not a style icon. So you go back to this era when
Yes.
when they're first hitting, and you look at Madonna. She still looks incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not looking at her going, "Oh God, those were the 80s." She's like, just great look. Bon Jovi, not so much.
Bon Jovi, their style is kind of like the Spinal Tap of that era. It's like all the
Right.
bad things that anybody was doing, they were doing.
Oh my goodness. So let's start with Madonna. The track we're going to feature here is Borderline, which I think is a good choice because it was the last single release from her debut album. So she's gaining steam. She's already charted and had commercial breakthroughs with a couple of songs before this came out. Lucky Star and Holiday was really the first one to crack the charts in the United States. She actually hit in Australia first. She had a number 12 hit in Australia with her second single release, Burning Up. Her first single was Everybody, which came out in 82, late in 82.
You see the video for Everybody?
Yeah.
I was watching old MTV and it just came on, and I'd actually never heard that song. I'm like, "What is this?" And it is very amateurish.
Well, then the Burning Up video, that, again, not a big budget production, but
Yeah,
this is where she really starts to display the brazen sexuality that would set her apart. I mean, she's basically just dancing around on the floor, kind of in the dark, the whole video, but she's getting more and more animated and more worked up
yeah,
as the thing goes along. You think she's about ready to climax when the song ends. But then, Lucky Star and Holiday hit. Not the big smashes she would have down the line, but definitely making chart inroads. She makes her first national television appearance in January of 84 on American Bandstand, which seems kind of quaint now, but MTV was still in its early stages and still wasn't available to a lot of the country at this point. So this show still had a lot of reach. Dick Clark still had a lot of pull in the industry, and she killed it on Bandstand. This is the first time for a lot of people, first opportunity to put a face to the name and see her distinctive look, see her dancing, and she is an accomplished dancer. She started out as a dancer. So it's funny, looking at a lot of vintage clips and interviews, she often says she was born in Detroit. Not the case. She was born in Bay City, Michigan, which is 2 hours north of Detroit on Saginaw Bay. It's a town of about 30,000. Moved to the suburbs of Detroit later with the family. Her Italian father was an engineer. Her mother died when she was very young of breast cancer, and she was named after her mother, Madonna Louise Ciccone. Here's her given name. And her mother was Madonna Louise Fortin, French Canadian. So family relocates to the Detroit suburbs. She grew up pretty comfortably middle class, engineer father. Went to private Catholic elementary schools and then high school then it was called Avon Township. It's now Rochester Hills, Michigan, a suburb north of Detroit. High achieving student. She was an A student, cheerleader in high school. Earned a dance scholarship to the University of Michigan, but dropped out after a year. And hit the Big Apple. 1978, she moves to New York by herself, hardly a penny to her name, with no prospects, just trying to make her way. But she had dance experience and ability. I'm not that knowledgeable about the world of dance, but I do know the names Alvin Ailey and Martha
yes.
Graham. Those are two of
Mhm.
the biggest names in that world, and she had connections to both while in New York. But she's struggling to make ends meet, working crappy jobs, living in squalor, as a lot of people did back then. Back then you could actually live in New York on a tight budget,
Yeah,
but it was gritty. I mean, it was
right.
gritty. By the time I made it to New York for the first time, it was post Rudy Giuliani, and it was
Yeah,
like Disneyland. I mean,
Disneyland, yes.
it wasn't anything
Yep,
like it was back in the late 70s when it was high crime and dirty, but it was a haven for the arts because, like I said, you could live there without making a lot of money if you were resourceful.
yeah,
And one thing we know about Madonna is she's resourceful. She is smart, she is savvy, and in the classic words of James Brown, she knows how to use what she got to get what she wants. And she's done that her whole
mhm.
career. But she went there as a dancer. She kind of got pivoted to music. She had a romantic relationship with a guy named Dan Gilroy, who would be in a band called Breakfast Club. He taught her to play guitar. She learned the drums. They kind of lived in almost a squat situation in an old synagogue in New York. And she started getting interested in music. She was told she had a good voice. She doesn't have a bad voice. She doesn't have a great voice. She's
Yeah,
never been a great vocalist. It kind of got me to thinking she would go on to be the biggest female pop star ever, a title that's soon to be snatched by one T Swift. But she's still the reigning queen of pop. And it got me to thinking, who would that have been? Who was the preeminent female pop star before Madonna? Which I think is an interesting question. And My feeling is that Madonna kind of filled a Madonna-shaped hole. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
the world was ready for this. There was no Madonna before Madonna, and she came at just the right time because, who were the big pop stars at that time? Olivia Newton-John. If you're talking about white
Yeah.
pop stars, Olivia Newton-John, but she's on the descent now. I mean, she had the massive hit with Physical, 10 weeks at number one in 1981, but that was really the end of her chart dominance. She had I think Twist of Fate was a top 10 hit. Who remembers that song? Linda Ronstadt was big at this time still,
Mhm.
but she kind of peaked at the turn of the 80s probably as a commercial force.
I feel like she's more of a '70s artist though, like
Yes,
that's
primarily 70s, yeah.
yeah,
But she was still really big in the early 80s.
yeah,
And her music's different. It's more rock oriented, less pop oriented.
mhm.
Uh,
And also, she's starting to get old.
that's the important point here. They all are. Diana Ross, still having big hits around this time, but again, getting
Also
old.
getting old, yeah.
Um, Barbara Streisand, again,
Old lady.
old, yeah, different ball game. The
Yeah,
Guilty album with Barry Gibb, huge hits,
yeah,
big record. But she's at the point in her career where she's not putting out a lot of material and she's getting older and she's more middle of the road
yeah.
and not current, not hip, not pop.
And it seems like more of the pop or kind of rock female artists were in band settings, not a solo artist.
Yes. And the one that Madonna herself kind of singled out as an influence was Debbie Harry
Mhm.
with Blondie. Obviously, iconic look, underrated singer, underrated performer. But she, for whatever reason, it just never happened for her as a solo artist. And that's kind of hard to pin down why that was because she certainly had the look and she was working with, the right artists. I mean, both Madonna and Debbie Harry put out records produced by Nile Rodgers. Like a Virgin was a smash hit, sold 20 million plus, and Debbie Harry's really didn't do anything. But again, I guess she's just kind of old hat. I mean, there's a limited lifespan for most pop stars. Madonna is the
Especially
exception.
women, especially female pop
Yes,
stars.
very
Yeah.
good point. Very good point. Madonna is the exception to that rule with her chart dominance over a long period of time. So that's kind of the pop landscape. The one name I haven't mentioned, Donna Summer, she's just kind of at the end of her chart dominance too. She works hard for the money, was a big hit around this time, but that would be the end of the line for her as a chart force. And, I think Donna Summer her style of music would be most similar to Madonna's style of music, disco influence. But Donna Summer just had that anchor, the taint of disco that she could not overcome.
Yes, she was always going to be connected to that.
Whereas Madonna is a new artist. She's putting out disco music,
Disco, yeah.
but they're not calling it disco music. It's now
No.
dance music.
It's
It's
dance
dance
music and
music.
club music, and it is being played in clubs, which are discos, but it doesn't have that history weighing it down. They've just changed the name. And really, I think of Madonna hand in hand with Michael Jackson. I mean, they are both coming from a place where they're doing dance music. They have other people writing for them. They have an image. It's all about the whole package. The biggest difference between the two of them though is that Madonna uses sex and Michael is basically like asexual, So
Michael is like, we just don't want to know what's really going on sexually in Michael's life. We just don't want to know
and
that.
he wasn't using that either,
Right.
like that
Yeah.
wasn't a part of his whole persona where
Not that
Madonna, it was
he was an attractive
yeah.
person,
And
but
I mean, and fans found
yeah.
him sexy, but it wasn't like he was using that the way Madonna was using it. It was one of the most important weapons in her arsenal that she was using.
Yes. And it was definitely something she was using. I mean, you look at those early interviews, and she used sex to disarm men quickly. And she is smart, she is savvy, and she can get most men to be putty in her hands. Now, she did have a lot of romantic sexual relationships that were beneficial to her.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go as far as to say that she was using these people because I think she maintained these relationships after the romantic part was over for years in most cases. So I don't think you'll see these guys that she was linked with, influential DJs like Mark Kamens, Dan Satiri, Jellybean Benitez, who was really instrumental in getting her off the ground commercially with his remixes. Stephen Bray, who she dated in college, her 1 year at Michigan, and then hooked up with again later on when they were both in New York. I don't think any of them speak ill of her. I feel like they were used and tossed away. It's just she had a lot of relationships. So her first real music experience outside of just kind of messing around in the garage, she got an opportunity. And we talked about this a while back when we put Born to Be Alive on our playlist back in 1980. She was recruited by Patrick Hernandez. You know, it's a Latino name, but he's a French artist. Had a minor pop hit and a big club hit with Born to Be Alive, which is a song that we put in our playlist for 1980. But she was recruited to join his traveling act as a backup singer and dancer. So went to Paris and performed with Patrick Hernandez. And in her mind, she's thinking, this is my gateway to the big time. I'm going to be discovered. It didn't really work out that way, but she got some experience, came back, and she's still fooling around with the Breakfast Club guys. But she dates the Danceteria DJ and gets her demo tape played in this club. That leads to a meeting with Sire Records, and she gets signed to a introductory contract to produce, I think, 2 singles. So that song "Everybody" was the song that was her first single, and then "Burning Up" after that. Both were club hits, but didn't crack the pop charts in the United States. As I mentioned, she did have a breakthrough in Australia with that second single. And then "Holidays," really the one where she started to get some real chart action on the pop chart. That's what led to her bandstand appearance.
Well, and
Uh,
the whole era too, and what was happening in clubs and how people could just cut a song, bring it down to the club and have the DJ just play it right then and there. Being in that loop and having Jelly Bean,
right. Proactive. She
yeah.
pounded the pavement. She,
Mhm.
obviously she's going to these clubs because she likes to dance and she's part of the scene, and she's really getting involved in a lot of different scenes in New York, art scene, dance scene. So she's spending time in these places and she's making the right connections and she's meeting the DJs and pressing the flesh in more ways than one and gets her tape to Cayman's, and Danceteria was hot. I mean, this is a club where you'd have 3,000 to 4,000 people on the weekend. So she's working hard on building her career, and the 2 singles that she releases for Sire, they don't make the top 40, but they're popping in the clubs. And wisely, the suits at Sire see enough potential there to extend her contract and give her a budget for an LP. So she records the self-titled Madonna LP, which is released late summer of 1983. She's still not calling all the shots at this point, so she's assigned a producer, Reggie Lucas, who has more of a jazz background. He played in Miles Davis's electric band in the early 70s, which at the time was reviled in some corners of jazz world. Now it's looked upon as maybe his most groundbreaking, influential work, but Lucas is in that band. Now, I see a really interesting comparison here. So, Lucas is best known at this point in the pop world as a writer producer on a hit song for Stephanie Mills in 1981. Never Knew Love Like This Before. And there's a lot of similarities between that song and her final single release from the self-titled album, the song we're featuring here, Boderline. A lot of the keyboard sounds are similar. You get just a great keyboard synth hook right off the top
Yeah.
that sucks you into Borderline. Extremely catchy melodic song. Lyrically, thematically, similar to the Stephanie Mills song as well. It's less of a club banger and just more of just a classic pop song. It is so catchy. Madonna may not be a great singer, but she's good enough. She's
Yeah.
good enough. And they got really good vocal takes from her in the studio. You look at some live performance clips, and she gets it done on stage in a live setting. She's not embarrassing herself vocally. She's got limited range, kind of in an upper register, but pleasant enough voice. She's hitting all the notes, and she's selling the lyric, which is the main job of the singer.
Which is one thing for that song. I mean, it has more depth to it as far as the lyrical content and the feeling behind it. It's not just a dance tune like
Right.
Holiday
I mean,
or.
holiday is just like, hey, let's go have fun and dance
Yeah,
and have a party. It's just not a lot to it.
right.
Borderline is just more about the pain of love, the pain of relationships, the yearning, the missing of someone, the ups and the downs. It's a great pop song. I don't think this is going to be the only Madonna song to make the playlist because Like a Prayer had some real classics on it at the end of the 80s. But this is probably my favorite Madonna song.
The thing that I like about Borderline is it probably of all of her singles, it's the one where you can just take it as the song itself. It doesn't have to have the visual of her. It doesn't have to have her dancing like Lucky Star kind of does. It's just a really good song. And not a lot of her songs are like that to me.
It's a 24 karat hook, that synth line.
Yeah.
But it starts with that electric piano, and that electric piano motif on the intro. Again, that's really reminiscent of the Stephanie Mills song. It's almost the same, might be in the same keyboard. But that synth line,
Mhm.
and we're still in the good synth era here. It's still got that analog warmth to it.
Yeah.
Doo, 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 doo. That's just a great hook.
Mhm.
Beautiful hook. Again, Madonna is somebody who wants to be in control of her own destiny. You know, she did everything that it took to get a foothold in the music industry, but she wanted to get to that point where ultimately she's calling all the shots. And she's not there yet when they start recording this album, but once they get into the recording process and it's moving along, she becomes pretty dissatisfied with Reggie Lucas. He doesn't ultimately end up finishing the project. She brings in her boyfriend, Jelly Bean Benitez, who really had no resume as far as a producer at this point. He's a club DJ and he's building a name for himself in New York as that. But to ultimately best enjoy Borderline, you got to hear the single mix, not the album mix, because he definitely lifts it up big time. Mainly just by cutting the flab, particularly in the chorus. All the extraneous lines of the chorus get cut out, and it makes it much sleeker and smoother and a much better listen. So it's the single version of Borderline that we're pushing here, not the LP version. But like most dance acts, you're going to have about 18 different versions of every single by Madonna. It's, 12 inches and various remixes and stuff. The LP version is definitely not the way to go here. You want to go for the single version of Borderline. It wasn't a huge smash. It hit number 10 on the US charts, but by now she's really gaining steam. She's got her first TV appearance on Dick Clark's show.
On Bandstand, is that the interview where Dick Clark says, "What do you want to do next?" And she says, "Take over the
Rule the
world."
world.
Rule
Rule
the
the world.
world.
Yeah,
Yep. She wasn't wrong.
it was perfect. And it would be a later TV appearance on MTV that would really push her into the stratosphere
Yeah.
um, when she was on the VMAs, Video Music Awards.
Yes.
We're not going to go into detail about Like a Virgin here. That's later in the year. But just the fact that she had a song called Like a Virgin in 1984.
Song and album
Yeah.
title. Yeah. I know. It's kind of crazy when you think about it now. Personally, I really prefer her debut album over that one. But you really see the difference, especially if you watch that Everybody video and then you watch Like a Virgin. I mean, her confidence, it's just unbelievable to see the difference there and where she went in 2 years.
Part of her appeal and probably the biggest foundation of her success is her just absolutely untrammeled self confidence. She is a very confident person.
Yeah.
And what is more sexy than self confidence? Not much.
Yeah.
So that definitely plays into that as well. But yes, once she got that first album out of the way, there was no stopping her. Now she is the shot caller. She is holding the reins, and it's off to the races. So that's Madonna. And now we're I joke with the New York accent there. It's really funny to watch her in those early interviews. She's clearly working on elocution from an early stage. So she's from mid Michigan. You have to listen closely in those interviews. You'll hear that accent come out. So it's kind of like a combination of Great Lakes, New York, and classy mid Atlantic kind of accent, which she's really going for. And she's clearly working hard to lose the traces of that Great Lakes accent, but it's funny when it pops out. But John Bon Jovi never had to pretend that he wasn't from New Jersey. That was intrinsic to his image.
Yes. And really, aside from Bruce Springsteen, Bon Jovi is the quintessential New Jersey band. I mean, they had an album called New Jersey. Obviously, John Bon Jovi, born in New Jersey. I'm talking about John Bon Jovi because, the band is called Bon Jovi.
but it is John Bon Jovi. It's not a band. Definitely not at this point.
Not at this point, no. I mean, it's not a band at all.
We're talking about Runaway, his first single hit, and he is a complete nobody at this point. Nobody's heard of this guy. Nobody.
And, actually, it's John Francis Bon Jovi Jr.
Bon Jovi. It's Italian last name. John changed the spelling for the band.
Yeah, his actual last name is spelled Bongovi. Bon Jovi. Like how Millie Bobby Brown spells her last name now because she's married to his son. It's
I just found that out today. My wife told me. So Millie Bobby Brown married John Bon Jovi's son.
Jake Bon Jovi. Yeah.
Yeah.
John Bon Jovi got into music when he was young. His mom was really struck by Beatlemania, bought him a guitar when he was like 7, and he took lessons, but nothing really came of that. But it wasn't until he was like 15 that he saw Bruce Springsteen in concert, and then he decided to pick up the guitar and actually start taking lessons seriously. So this is like around 1980. He starts working for his cousin, and we've talked about this a little bit on some of the other episodes. I don't remember why this came up before, but his cousin, it's actually his second cousin because he's quite a bit older than John. His second cousin, Tony Bon Jovi, was in the music business, and he had this partnership with Mako Minardo, who the only reason anybody's ever heard of Mako is because of the Star Wars albums that were popular in like 1980. Well, Star Wars and Other Galactic Funk came out in 1977. But I didn't realize that Tony and Mako also were part of the production team that was responsible for Gloria Gaynor's Never Can Say Goodbye. So they were big in the disco scene. And then Tony opened the Power Station studio in 1977. And John Bon Jovi, his nephew, started working at the studio for him and basically just kind of as a gopher, and
sweeping the floor, getting coffee.
The floor, which he just happened to be doing one day when they were recording the Star Wars Christmas album, Christmas in the Stars. And they asked him, hey, well, you can sing, right? So why don't you step up to the mic and sing a couple verses on this R2D2 We Wish You a Merry Christmas song we're recording. And so John did. And I heard an interview with him talking about it, and he was like, they were trying to record it with an adult singing that part, and it just didn't sound right. And the chorus of that song is like a chorus of children. And so when you hear the song and you hear his voice, it does sound like it makes a little bit more sense. But all I can imagine is that he seems like somebody that would have been on like Croft Superstars or like, the Bay City Rollers, something like that. It's very cheesy and silly. So that was his first commercial recording. But, he had some vocal talent, kind of like Madonna. He's competent. But he had drive, and so he kept moving forward and, working in the studio. He's having contact with all these big-time musicians, and he's got an in the business there. At this point, John's only like 19 years old. He's really not in a position where he's got much going for him, except he's in this bar band, and he's got a cousin who has connections. But really, when you look at him, especially back in that era, good-looking guy, not like a big time rocker dude, more of kind of like a pop rock kind of guy, like Rick Springfield.
Boy Next Door kind of.
Yeah, he doesn't have an edge to him really.
Yeah.
Like he's kind of trying to, but it's not really just like innately in him. So at this point, he had recorded some demos at the Power Station. They did record Runaway as one of those demos. He didn't have a band together. He was using session musicians, people that were recording at the studio that just kind of happened to be there at the time. One of them was Roy Batan from Bruce Springsteen's E Street Band on keyboards, who does play that riff at the beginning of Runaway. It's not written by him, however. It was actually written by the keyboardist of John's bar band. So he's got Roy Batan. The other people in the band, I actually didn't recognize any of the names, but you probably would, Matt. They called themselves the All-Star Review, this backing band. But a local radio station was having like a homegrown talent battle of the bands kind of contest. And so John brought the song down to the station and entered it into the contest, and it won. So by that, they got signed to Mercury Records and they released the single and it scraped the top 40 in the US. It was like number 39. Before they released the album, they decided to change the name of the band. The A&R staff basically came up with Bon Jovi, taking John's name and shortening it, or not really shortening it, I guess, but just making it two separate words.
The name change was very clever. It looks like Van Halen. It's reminiscent of Van Halen. That had to be what they were thinking there.
Yeah, that's a good point because it does come across visually like that.
Yeah.
Coming up with the name Bon Jovi too, rather than calling it John Bon Jovi, if they use the name like they did, it's more of a band, not just him. Which at that point it wasn't a band. He had to then scramble to put together a band. And that's when Richie Sambora came into the picture.
Back to those session musicians, though. You know, I'm looking at the names, and coincidentally, one of the musicians, Tim Pierce, the guitarist, kind of got his start playing with Rick Springfield.
Yes,
Yeah.
I saw that.
Yeah.
Yes. Which I thought that was interesting because really,
Yeah.
this song especially does have that feel to me. It really feels like Jesse's Girl or, kind of a rock pop song. And this single stands alone is not recorded by the band Bon Jovi. But once they started to put together the band, the original guitarist was Dave Sabo, who was a childhood friend of John's, and he actually left and went on to start Skid Row. But then Richie came in. They had a really good drummer. He was an experienced guy, Tico Torres. He helped keep that first album strong because they were pretty inexperienced. I mean, Richie Sambora wasn't. He came from a blues background and he's an accomplished guitarist.
Yeah.
He's a songwriter.
He's the guy with the chops.
Yes. And I think really the two of them together is what brought Bon Jovi to the level that they would become in a few years, which is the biggest band in the world. John needed that edge, I think, and he needed the experience and the talent that Richie Sambora provided. Because really, judging just by this debut album and the single Runaway, I feel like Bon Jovi could have easily become a one-hit wonder. It could have been like Hot Child in the City, a song like that just carried on as an 80s radio song and kind of a one-hit wonder, but really never became more of than anything else.
It seemed for a while that's what they were. I mean, because the second album, 7,800 degrees Fahrenheit.
The second album just basically really went nowhere. And this first album, it's a pretty good album actually, but there's only a few other songs on it that I think could have been.
I would use the word competent again. It's certainly not bad. There's nothing on there that's cringy.
There's probably about 3 or 4 songs on there that I think are good. Nothing reaches the height of Runaway.
No.
Nothing is really good enough that it could have been a hit. I mean, Runaway was barely a hit, I mean, it wasn't a hit. I mean, it would just barely scrape the top 40, but it had longevity. Some of these songs, they're just too cliched. They're too generic. There's nothing about it that really makes it stand out.
What does stand out for me is his falsetto vocal toward the end of the song, which is not great.
And that doesn't help the song in any way.
No, it doesn't. But it doesn't kill the song. It's still a very good rock song for the era, but yeah, it's a little.
It just gets really cheesy at the end, and
Yeah.
I think that the thing about the song "Runaway," number one, it is one of the stickiest songs. It is one of the stickiest songs that we've done this entire podcast. I cannot get this song out of my head. It's so catchy.
Yep, and it's that keyboard hook, Roy Bataan, and that's a couple of times that he's made our playlist as a session guy because he played on Bonnie Tyler's "Fast and the Speed of Night" album as well.
Oh,
so he's on Total Eclipse of the Heart. So
yeah, and it's really that keyboard riff which starts the song that draws you in right from the beginning, and it's the chorus that is so catchy, and it's got the break where it kind of makes it more exciting. It's just one of those songs I can understand why it has had longevity, but it really is not necessarily because of John Bon Jovi that this song is good. And it's funny, I think that he did that at the end. He goes into the high falsetto and it actually lasts for quite a while that he's doing that. And it's like, okay, I could see maybe you just wanted to prove that you can do it, but it's really going on way too long. And he ends up doing that also on Living on a Prayer, like steps it up to the next level. And it's just like oh my god, no one's ever gonna be able to sing this, and he's never gonna be able to sing this again. But, like we were talking before about the difference between Madonna and Bon Jovi, when you watch these early performances of the band, the video for Runaway, seeing them on American Bandstand in 1984, they are just so amateurish. They're wearing the most ridiculous clothes you've ever seen. I mean, it's like Spinal Tap for the 80s. And they just look awkward on stage, like, especially on Runaway on the video for Runaway, they were miming. They don't even look like they know how to play their instruments, and it really is a testament to how hard John Bon Jovi really did have to work to get to where he went just 2 years later in 1986 when Slippery When Wet came out.
Listen, anybody that makes it to the commercial level that these people, Madonna, Bon Jovi, Michael Jackson, Taylor Swift, you name it, they had to put the work in.
Yes.
It didn't just happen. It's not a fairy tale. Fairy tales are fairy tales. It's not reality. To get to that level, you have to work your ass off. And both Madonna and John realized that from the beginning, and they were smart, organized, and driven, and business savvy.
But one of the things that really stands out to me when I hear an album like Bon Jovi's debut is that, you have bands where they're working on grit, but not as much talent. And then you have a band like Van Halen, where you listen to their debut album and you're just like, oh my God, they are so incredibly talented musicians, talented musicians and songwriters that it's leaps and bounds above
Yeah,
anyone. And
yeah.
and so, like John Bon Jovi to me kind of feels like a less talented version of like Sammy Hagar or Billy Squire or,
That's a good comparison. And the song fits into a style of music that was current, hard rock with a strong keyboard element. And this is a fairly new thing at this point in time.
yeah, so it really fit right into the mold. But I think that once Richie Sambora came into the band, he started pushing them more into a rock
Right.
vein. And I think if that didn't happen, or if they didn't get someone else in who had more of that background, that I do really think that Bon Jovi would have just continued going more into that direction of,
Loverboy. Yeah.
yes, yes, the more pop rock vein, not so heavy. And even when Slippery When Wet comes out, they're still not like a really heavy band. They definitely have a pop element to them always.
That's a really intriguing thing about Bon Jovi is how do you classify them? You can't really call them glam metal.
No. Although they have the look in the
Yes,
early days.
there are elements of that, and a lot of their fans would have been into that same kind of glam metal stuff,
Yeah.
but they're a different animal because of what you mentioned. They lack that edge. There's no edge. I
Yeah.
mean, it's pop-oriented hard rock,
Yes. Much more melodic.
like Van Halen, but not as good. Pretty boy frontman,
Mhm.
rocking songs with pop smarts.
Can scream and yelp in the high registers.
Yep.
Yeah, but I think that they were writing some of their own songs, not all of them, but they were writing some songs. But it wasn't until they brought in Desmond Child for Slippery When Wet in 1986 that he was the co-writer on Living on a Prayer and You Give Love a Bad Name, which are their two biggest hits. So they did bring in professional songwriting, which is something that Van Halen didn't do.
This is where the Madonna and Bon Jovi career paths diverge because Madonna, that first record, Reggie Lucas wrote Borderline. She didn't write
Yeah.
Borderline. She didn't write the lyrics. She didn't write the music. But going forward, she's definitely more of a singer-songwriter.
Well, he and Richie were co-writers,
Yeah.
and they were just bringing in other writers with them.
Madonna always worked with collaborators, but she was the one getting the composing credit for the most part.
Yeah. Bon Jovi it's his name.
Yeah.
He is the visual aspect of this band. But when you look at Bon Jovi as a band, you think John Bon Jovi. But really, it's John Bon Jovi and Richie Sambora, and it's them two together. And I think that, yes, John had the look, so he was a great front man. And he had the personality, he had the smarts, he could carry the band, he had a good stage presence. But really, musically, he needed Richie Sambora to make Bon Jovi what they were.
And two guys who didn't have to change I mean, John Bon Jovi changed the spelling of his name, but he didn't change the pronunciation.
Yeah.
That's two great rock names. John Bon Jovi and Richie Sambora. Come on now.
Yes. And Richie Sambora still looks like a rocker dude now. And I've been watching, interviews with them, both of them. And I think John Bon Jovi now it's interesting actually because a lot of the things that I saw or heard him on podcasts, they were on business podcasts. Like people interviewing people who are savvy businessmen. John Bon Jovi is one of those people and Richie definitely still a rock dude and sometimes comes across as either he's just really messed up because I know he did go through rehab several times or his brain is a little bit fried or he just still is that dude that he was in the 80s and he's still that guy.
My impression of John is a guy who's, like I said, not a teetotaler.
Yeah,
He probably had fun and partied, but
never to excess.
yeah, exactly. Just managed it, managed it well.
Yes, agreed.
So yeah, I'm not a I'm not a huge fan of either of these artists, but my appreciation has grown over the years of Madonna. And again, one of the residual effects of us doing this exercise, this podcast, is a renewed appreciation for pop music.
Yeah.
Whereas before I was probably more rock oriented. And she's put out a lot of great pop songs, undeniably great pop songs.
I definitely appreciate her debut album now, which I had never really listened to it before, and I think it's a good album. I enjoyed it much more than I thought I would. Bon Jovi, I would say that their debut album is about what I thought it was going to be. Has a few other songs that are catchy.
I would say it's maybe a little better than I was expecting, even
Okay.
though I don't particularly like it that much, but
Yeah,
I was expecting it to be crap.
it's not embarrassing. I guess maybe I was expecting it to be a tiny better because I really like the song Runaway a lot.
I'll say this, it's better than the Loverboy albums.
Yes.
I mean, Loverboy's best songs were better than Bon Jovi's best songs, Loverboy's best singles. But as far as the album is concerned, I think start to finish, Bon Jovi self-titled is a more pleasant listen than the Loverboy albums that I listened to.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And you know what also I think is kind of interesting is that Bon Jovi by 1986, they were huge,
Yeah.
huge. I mean, one of the biggest bands in the world and continued to be, but they're one of those bands where I'm like, I don't really know that many of their songs. Like I know the big hits, obviously, but to think about how big they are, granted, of course, their popularity waned, but they were still putting out hits into the mid 90s.
Yeah.
Def Leppard's kind of like that for me too.
Yeah, Def Leppard is probably the best comparison in terms of sales power and style of music. Def Leppard didn't have the pretty boy frontman, but that's probably the best comparison.
Early on, Def Leppard kind of had that awkwardness about them. They look kind of dorky.
Yeah,
It's very similar to what Bon Jovi was
but
doing at this
again,
time.
down to earth guys,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
just still tied to their hometown, Sheffield. Same with Bon Jovi.
Yep.
And I got to give them a lot of credit too. One of the reasons you can't link them to the whole glam metal thing, Bon Jovi was able to pilot their way through the early 90s alternative rock revolution and still remain commercially relevant after that, where most
Yeah.
of the bands of their ilk were slaughtered.
Yeah, that's true. I was surprised that I didn't realize they were still having hits up until like 95.
Yes.
And I wasn't paying attention to popular music at that time, so that's probably why I didn't know. But that's true. They were able to weather that and still come out now as, they never lost their popularity in that sense, but they also never really did anything terrible. Like they didn't do
Yeah.
anything to like
Oh,
taint
it's
their
just
image.
competent straight through.
Yeah. And I think that actually, as time went on, John Bon Jovi improved his image because he then became an actor. He was in quite a few big Hollywood movies. So he did expand himself in that way. He opened restaurants. He did, a lot of the things that a lot of these savvy business rock people do. He did those things. But I also think being tied to New Jersey, too, really gave them something to hold on to that is part of their image. Like the Boss, they're the two most popular, biggest acts that came out of New Jersey, and they, still have homes there.
What would be number 3?
The thing is, though, there's probably quite a few
Yes.
bands that are from Jersey, but you don't know they are. They don't have it as part of their identity and their whole image like Bruce and Bon Jovi do. Bon Jovi named their album New Jersey. Their album that came out after the most popular album in the world, their next album was New Jersey. You have bands that either, they're born there or they form there even, but then they move on, or even they don't move on, but nobody knows that they're from that state. Thing about Bruce and Bon Jovi is that they are tied to New Jersey, and they
Everybody
make
knows.
a
Yeah.
point to keep that as part of their image.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Actually, that would be kind of a fun thing to explore. What bands are tied to their, like, Akron, Ohio, like people
Right.
REM and
Yeah.
Athens, Georgia, like, what bands have kept that as part of their image and their whole, persona is really tied to where they're from?
I love it. Right up my alley. Let's look at different cities and towns and find out who the band most associate with them. All right, before we end this episode, I want to go back here. We're in early 1984, and the songs we add to our playlist this week: Borderline by Madonna, Runaway by Bon Jovi. We are now in the Stranger Things era. Okay, so the show Stranger Things, I think the timeline on that show was, I think it started out in 1983
Yes.
and then ended in 1987. So we are in that era now. We've already referenced Millie Bobby Brown in this
And,
episode.
guess what song was in Stranger Things? Runaway.
Oh, was it?
Yes. It
Okay,
was in season
nice.
2 in one of the most hated episodes where she runs away and she's a little runaway. Yeah, it's used very prominently in that episode.
Obviously, music was very important in that series, particularly the Kate Bush song, Running Up That Hill, which had a huge surge in popularity after that. In fact, charted. I think it was probably the most streamed song
Yeah,
at
it
one
hit
point.
number 1.
But Cheryl, I know you were a fan of the series, and I know you were gearing up to watch the final season, and you went back and rewatched it. I got to get your take on the
Oh my
finale.
god, do we have, like, 5 hours?
It
Oh,
was
Matt, you don't even understand. You don't even understand how much time I have already discussed this with my children. We have probably spent at least 10 to 20 hours talking about this, so
it hasn't spoiled my enjoyment of the series, but obviously they should have knocked it on the head after 4 seasons instead of bringing back a bunch of, late 20s, early 30s actors
that's the
parading as
beginning of it. I mean,
children.
honestly, I could suspend disbelief as far as their ages go if it were done well. I'd be like, "Whatever, that's fine, I don't care." They've always been the older kids have always been too old for their characters, but that's just, like, the most minor issue is their age. Don't even get me started, seriously. I should be doing an entire podcast about this with my kids because they are as into it as I am.
there's
It
there's
is
probably a hundred other people doing that
Yes,
already.
because
So well,
there's
yeah.
just so much to unpack here. I feel like this season felt like the Duffer Brothers were just so worried about trying to please everyone that in turn they pleased no one.
Joe Keery, some may not know, is a musician as well, and we're going to talk about our favorite music of 2025. We nice get together. You said his album might be your favorite of the
Oh yeah,
year.
it's definitely on my list.
I haven't listened yet, but I'm very curious now.
It's just great pop music. It's catchy, it's current, but it also kind of draws back from like 80s sounds, and it's really good. And I've always loved Joe Carey. I love the character of Steve. He's a beloved character on the show. Everybody
Oh
loves
yeah,
him.
loved it too.
And
Yeah.
he's what made that character. And yeah, it's in the running for me.
Yes. So we're going to talk more about Joe Keery and his stage name Joe DJO, in which he
Yes.
recorded the album, among other favorites from 2025. And Mike will join us. Mike will carry the weight on this episode because we don't find a whole lot of time to listen to new music with all the 1984 music we're burying ourselves in.
That's true. Mike and I are going to have very similar lists. Let's just put it that way. 'Cause he's introduced me to a lot of stuff.
So that is coming next, and it won't be too long. We promise we're going to stop these interminable delays between shows, hopefully going forward. So we'll continue to plow on with 1984 after next week's episode when we review the music of 2025. But until then, thank you for joining us on Matt and Cheryl's Gen Excellent Playlist. I'm Matt.
I'm Cheryl.
Take care, everybody.